Hello everyone. Today I will recap you a movie titled Saw 3 2006, so make some tea and we'll start. At the very beginning of the film, we are shown Detective Matthews. He has been in the bathroom since the first part and notices Adam's corpse and the surgeon's sawn-off leg. He doesn't want to repeat Gordon's fate at all, so he takes the toilet lid and decides to crush his leg instead of completely losing it. And now we are going to the scene of a new crime. Some avid prison lover is chained to almost all parts of his body. He just needs to get rid of them in 2 minutes and leave the room before the bomb explodes. He takes turns tearing off the chains along with the pieces of meat, but he doesn't have time. Detective Rick calls Carrie to the crime scene. She is very worried about Matthews, but then she comes to her senses and realizes that this crime was not organized with the help of a saw. Kramer always gave a chance to survive, but now it was simply impossible. The person physically could not get out of the trap. Carrie comes home and begins to disassemble the videotape intended for the victim. Suddenly, the TV switches, and a recording of a live broadcast with a girl sitting on the bed appears on the screen. After several bullets into the alleged camera, the video does not stop, and she still decides to check who is hiding in the closet. However, this man in a pig mask is far from being in the closet, but right behind her back. She comes to her senses already in limbo. In the literal sense of the word, a device is chained to the girl's ribs, which will tear her body apart if she does not have time to open the lock in 1 minute. But there is a problem. The key is in a jar with acid, which corrodes it every second. Despite the hellish pain, she still manages to get the key and turn the lock. But nothing happens. This game, like the previous one, is more like torture because there is simply no chance of survival. The detective's insides open up and she dies. Finally, we get to know the main character. Lynn Denlon suffers from depression due to marital problems. She spent the night with her lover and is now rushing to work at the hospital. The girl drinks pills and is in limbo all the time. She even has to be pulled out of the wardrobe to save a dying patient. The end of the working day. Lynn is about to go home, but the locker room door is closed, and when she tries to figure out what happened, the pig man kidnaps her. Our heroine wakes up in a huge room. There are a lot of scary objects around, and Amanda enters the room, and then asked Lynn to be a good girl and took her to an adapted hospital room, where John Kramer is dying under an oxygen mask. And it is Lynn who should prolong his life. A device is attached to the girl's neck, which is connected to sensors on John's heart. And if the old man's heart stops, they will die together at the same time. The player of this most recent game is Jeff. By nature, he is not the most calm person. His youngest son died, so his wife also left, leaving a little daughter. By the way, the man does not care about her deeply. He takes toys from her son, screams, and simply does not appreciate. Jeff wants one thing: revenge on the one who killed his son. This man was given too short a sentence, and now the killer is at large. On one of the days of his next tantrum, he is kidnapped by a man in a pig mask. He is locked in a small hanging box, but somehow swaying, falls to the floor and gets out. In front of him is a box with a key, a piece of a photo and a hint. And while our player is trying to find the right door, Lynn is trying to convince Kramer's assistant that he needs to be taken to the hospital because he can't live without surgery. But Amanda is also not the most compliant girl in this world, and she decides to intimidate the doctor because from the very beginning, it was clear that they would not get out of here. The old man apparently tired of watching this picture, and he begins to shake in convulsions, which almost leads to death. Finally, Amanda realized the gravity of the situation and agreed to the operation, but Lynn will perform it right here. Jeff finally finds the right door and gets into a huge freezer. In the center hangs a completely naked woman. He doesn't understand anything and tries to open the lock with his key, but nothing comes out. And then he finds a voice recorder. The record says that this girl was an eyewitness to the accident that killed her son. She ran away from the scene of the crime, and now it's up to the man to decide whether to save her or leave her for dead, because all 3 years he furiously cursed everyone who was somehow involved in the accident. The witness was doused with water, and Jeff, having broken down a little, still decides to take the second key, which is located behind an iron grate. When he takes it out, there's one big icicle hanging in the center of the room, and the lock can't be opened anymore. Well, we'll have to go further. His next note says that one bullet can solve all problems, and another fragment of the photo, this time with his son. Meanwhile, the jigsaw's assistant took out all the tools necessary for the operation and once again scared the girl to death. Obviously, it's just to keep her from relaxing. No matter how strong Amanda may seem, she is very worried about John and calms herself down because the operation will reduce the pressure on the brain. Meanwhile, the second test begins. This time the victim was a judge who punished the boy's killer too mildly. He is chained to the bottom of a huge pit, but Jeff can save him. The key to the judge's collar is in a transparent box along with the younger son's belongings, which the man kept as the apple of his eye. If he can overcome himself and burn his dear memories, the person will be saved. To make Dad think better, the pit is gradually filled with a nasty slurry of piglets twisted in a meat grinder. The sight is so terrible that even Jeff can't stand it. The man burns the toys and manages to pull the victim out of the pit, which Amanda immediately informs the jigsaw. Lynn cuts off a piece of the skull, which fills the old man with warm memories. He confesses his love to the doctor, seeing his beloved wife in front of him. Amanda runs away in a fit of rage to hurt herself. She remembers all the moments of cooperation with the jigsaw, and even such activities as transporting half-dead bodies seem romantic to her, because he was always there. She returns and begins to molest the old man, but receives a remark from the girl and attacks her in a fit of rage. She becomes a good girl only in front of Kramer and leaves the room when he drives her away. While the game continues, and Jeff proceeds to the final test. The culprit of the accident is hanging on an iron cross, a guy named Timothy. All his joints gradually twist clockwise. To stop the mechanism, the man needs to get the key, but the key itself is attached to the shotgun, and as soon as it breaks off the chain, a shot will occur. And then the question arises, is Jeff ready to sacrifice his head for the sake of his son's killer? Of course I'm ready, because the bullet hits the judge in the head, but it's too late to stop the mechanism. Timothy's limbs are already completely twisted, and his head is rotated 180 degrees, and the person is left alone again. After that, he finds a gun for a previously found bullet, loads it, and moves on. And our old man apparently has turned into a psychologist and is trying to talk to Lynn about her family by performing the following action. Amanda enters the room again and informs that the player has passed all the tests but has not left the room yet. That's why she doesn't want to take the collar off the doctor's chest, even at the request of the jigsaw. And in another fit of jealousy, he tells how her poor woman was beaten by a wounded Eric. But John condemns her because in the end, she killed the detective, just like all her other victims. The girl doesn't listen and shoots Lynn after hearing footsteps outside. In fact, Jeff turned out to be the doctor's husband. He bursts into the room, picks up his wife's body, and simultaneously fires his only bullet at Amanda. All these games were a test for her too. The jigsaw chose her as his successor, but she failed. She did not test the will to live, but only deprive people of their last chance. Her game is over. Meanwhile, Jeff will have to pass his last level. The saw offers him a choice: forgive him and save his wife, or spend this time killing. The man apparently decided to combine the two options. He puts his hand on the old man, says he forgives him, and cuts the patient's throat. On his last breath, John turns on a recording in which he notifies that only he is to blame for the boy's death, and only he knows where their daughter is now, and that her oxygen is slowly running out. The device on Lynn's neck explodes, and a new game has started right now.